Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our parking day information session. We're going to give everyone a few more minutes to join, 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started. This should be a pretty quick presentation. I don't expect to take the full hour, but we will have an opportunity for questions at the end of the presentation. Feel free to put them in the chat feature as we go along, and I will address them accordingly, or you can wait until the end. So please hold tight. Thanks. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So my name for quick introductions is Kimberly Vaca. I am the Parking Day Coordinator for DDOT. So if you're interested in attending this event or participating, you'll be working directly with me. And then also here with us today is Robert Preston with the Office of Risk Management, who will be going over the insurance requirements for this event. And he can answer any questions about that, which is included in this slide. So let's go ahead and begin. So today we'll be going over what is Parking Day if you're not familiar with this event, and the history that we've had in the District of Columbia, the event guidelines, the top application process, and then a session for questions at the end. All of this information can be found at our website if you just Google DC Parking Day, or ddot.dc.gov/page/parking-day-DC. This includes a brief summary of what the event is, and at the bottom you can see all of our guidelines for insurance, event design guidelines, and then the TOPS application process. So all this information is pulled from these three documents, which can be found on our website. I won't be going over every detail, but really the most important ones that come up most frequently and have the most questions. So Parking Day has been going around for quite some time, since 2005. It started in San Francisco as a form of protest for the amount of space that was given to cars and vehicles in this country, and what things could look like when we prioritize people over vehicles. But it has since turned into an annual event held on the third Friday of September across the US and abroad, and allows for the temporary transformation of on-street parking spaces to pop-up parks for people, as shown in the two examples on the right. Although it is a temporary one-day event, this isn't our mechanism for permanently transforming these spaces. It does allow people to understand, what our world could be when we start looking at public space for people instead of cars, and helps us shift in that direction, and how we utilize public space. So where can this happen? How do you participate? Essentially, you as resident, you as a community organization, as a business, can participate in any space on the street that is a metered parking space. It could be one space or multiple. We have allowed, 3 to 4 parking spaces for each group as desired, but they need to be in the middle of a block, or at least have one parking space width from the intersection, which is around 22 feet. That helps for safety concerns, but basically any meter parking space in the center of a block. You're not eligible to have a pop-up parklet on any street that has rush hour restrictions because those will be used for potentially vehicles to travel on parts of the day, and cannot be near the DC streetcar on H Street. But ultimately, I'm here to work with you on finding a location that meets these guidelines. I'm happy to walk through areas that I think would be great for this. If you're not sure where to start, or if you have an idea, feel free to send it to me and I can give you the general green light. Um, but it's pretty extensive and is allowed in all wards of the district. Some general guidelines about uses: you cannot sell things. No vending is allowed in the park or advertising. Activities should be confined within the parking space, so we can't have anything happening in the travel lane or on the adjacent sidewalk because those are needed for the flow of people. You cannot just set up your space and then just leave it throughout the day. You need at least one person in the space at all times. And then we recommend keeping a copy of your permit that you'll receive from us and your site plan on hand during the event in case there are any questions or concerns that happen. So you can say, hey, I've been approved by DDOT and this is a sanctioned event. So what do you need to make these spaces safe? This is because it is temporary, it's one day. We allow extreme flexibility. You don't have to like build a structure or anything to participate. So we allow barriers to be made of potted plants, fences, railings, boxes, pallets, milk crates, traffic cones, basically anything that can really delineate the space from the parking area. The biggest requirement is that these barriers are continuous and cannot have any gaps. So if you wanted to use cones, for example, you can place those barriers 2 feet apart from each other and then connect them with some sort of rope, bungee cord, chain, tape, anything that would basically make them connect across the entire boundary. And the barrier should be at least 1 foot tall, but then no taller than 5 feet. So that does allow for some variation in materials. We've seen a lot of different creative ways to do this. I'm happy to work with you on some cheap materials if you're not sure where to start as well. The main requirement though, and we can work with you on this too, is that to protect the space from people parking adjacent to it, we require that the space from the vehicular approach end, so basically the space before your parklet, is protected by either a parked vehicle or some other safety barrier. That can include a pop-up bike rack, large crates, large planters, or even we have curb extensions that are already built into the roadway that you can place your parklet next to, and then you don't have to provide anything. But anything that goes there cannot be used as seating or a gathering space. We don't want to encourage people to be using that area for your parklet when it's meant to protect your parklet as a buffer. So what does that look like visually? I created this site plan that I'm happy to share. You can use this to submit for your pop-up parklet. It's very basic. It will show your address of where you're proposing to have this parklet, the parklet area, which will include the 2 foot buffer from the adjacent travel lane, and then where you'll put your barrier here with a description of what you're using. And then showing here the parking space before, right? Because the direction of travel is heading this way, and then describing what you're planning to use there, and then the dimensions. This is showing for one parking space. 8 feet by 20 feet is our typical size for parking. But if you wanted to use multiple parking spaces, you can just change this to be 40 feet or 60 feet or 80 feet, etc. And then you would draw in here the type of elements and materials that you plan to use, and then describe the activity that you're proposing. So I wanted to show some examples of what we've seen in the past and what to do and what not to do. Not to shame anyone who are on these slides, but I wanted to show an example between a correct pop-up parklet and one that doesn't meet our guidelines. So on the left here, you'll see a really cool activation of chess, and then on the right, pretty something that's generally standard. What we see is like tables and chairs and outdoor dining, but the parklet on the left does not meet our guidelines for a few reasons. The first is that these barriers are more than 2 feet apart. So you can see here, so anyone driving by could just walk right through this space, or from the sidewalk could walk right into the travel lane. We do not want that. The posts are not linked by a rope or other similar items. You can see over here, they spaced their cones 2 feet, and then they added um, these flags to connect it so that it's one continuous space, even though it's a similar concept with the cones. And then lastly, this on the left did not include a 2 foot buffer from this travel lane so that there's space between where people are driving and then where people are hanging out. This really is meant because not all drivers are paying attention and following the law. And if they happen to shift slightly into the parking lane, we want to make sure that there's a safe buffer there for your parklet to not be impacted or collided into because we are not using extensive like concrete jersey barriers, for example. So we really need that 2 foot buffer. Other fun examples that we've seen over time, again, the standard like park space with planters and sod. On the right here, someone had a pop-up thrift, um, basically like donation area where people donated clothes, and then you could go by and no one was vending there, just for you to take with you. So that was a really cool like clothes swap idea that we saw last year. We've seen some pop-up dog parks for people to bring their dogs and run around within the parking space, putt-putt golf or areas just to hang out and chill. We've seen art installations, so you can really be creative here and make it your own, whether it's representing your community organization or your business or yourself in your neighborhood. We love the creativity that we've seen and are trying to make as many different ideas work with this. So, parking day this year is going to be on Friday, September 16th. We actually in the past have had the event from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., but have extended it to 7 p.m. this year. So now more interest can be given to this event because this could happen after work hours, during happy hour on a Friday. And so we're trying to get the most out of this event. So now that you have let's see, 7 plus 3 is 10. You have 10 hours for parking day this year. But you'll need to submit a few things with your public space permit, and I'll walk you through that process next. But when you apply for your public space permit, you'll need a park concept, which includes just like a written description of the location of your park, why it's eligible, how it met the previous criteria, and how you plan to use that space. So whether it's for any of the activities we described before. Um, then you'll include this site plan back here of your location, your address, and then all of the elements that are included in it as part of your application for us to review. The parking day release form, which is included in the document that basically helps show that you're able to participate in this event. The certificate of liability insurance, which Robert will go through shortly, and that's it. That's all that's included in your permit. We then review that in TOPS, which I'll go through. It's an administrative permit. We also waived the parking meter fees this year again, so you will not need to pay for the parking meter while you use it for the day. And then once you submit your permit, you'll just email me at kimberly.vaca@dc.gov, and I'll put that at the end of this presentation with your permit tracking number so that I can make sure it gets sent to me for review and to others, and we can get you through that process quick and painless. So now I'll shift it over to Robert, and he can walk through the insurance requirements.
Thank you, Kimberly. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. And again, thank you for your interest in participating in this year's parking day. For those of you who are doing it again, you know the drill, and it should be pretty straightforward. As Kimberly mentioned, it's pretty much the same as previous years. For the insurance requirements, as you can see there, we're basically just looking for some general liability coverage. And if you're an organization, you should already have that in place. The only caveat, of course, as Kimberly mentioned already, is that the government of the District of Columbia needs to be the certificate holder of your certificate of insurance and also be named as an additional insured, and a waiver of subrogation must be in place. If you are an individual who wants to participate in the parking day, there are options, and we can discuss them. Primarily, we're open to If you have a car, obviously to use your car insurance, if it's the blocking vehicle as Kimberly described, or if you don't have a car and you're using a curbside, you still need some general liability coverage for at least your space, and sometimes your homeowner's insurance will cover that. Again, if you don't have that, feel free to give me a call or email me, and we can sort through the requirements on that. We just want to make sure that if, should anything happen, hopefully not, at your space, that at least you have some sort of coverage to address any claims that come forth. So just a note for the types of carriers, we only accept those who are rated A or 8 or higher. Those are pretty much the standard insurance carriers that are out and about, so there's not usually not an issue. Um, and if you are for some reason using a contractor to help build your space, just make sure they have insurance as well. So in case something falls or collapses or somebody gets injured, um, then they have insurance as well. So you can go back to them and file a claim with them. The next slide just shows an example of the certificate of insurance. I know it's a little tiny there, but hopefully on your screen you're able to make it a little larger. As you can see in the bottom left, basically that's how we would like to see the certificate holder listed. And then the waiver subrogation and the additional insured are noted on the certificate of insurance as well, both in the respective columns and then also in the description section. And again, your agent, your or your broker, depending on who you use for your insurance coverage, will be able to just guide you through that. The requirements are listed and should be straightforward for whoever you're working with. But again, we're here for any questions or comments, concerns regarding insurance or anything else, of course, as well. So that's it on my part. So I'll be around for questions at the end then. Thanks, Kimberly.
Thanks. All right, so moving to the next section, fun section, which is the TOPS application. So to participate in Parking Day, you need to submit a public space permit. That's how we review your pop-up parklet and ensure that it meets our design requirements and that you're a sanctioned part of the event. So applications are due at the end of August on Friday, August 26th. So you have quite some time to figure out what your concept is, what you to work with us, and then to get you through the system prior to the event held in September. So that's not when we review them, but that's the last day to submit. So mark that on your calendars and make sure that you get it in time. So I'm not going to go through every step here, but I want to highlight the really important ones. So the type of permit you'll need to submit in TOPS, which the TOPS is this website up here on the top right corner, tops.ddot.dc.gov. You'll need to create an account if you don't already have one. It's relatively painless. And then you'll submit a temporary occupancy permit for other special event. Make sure you do not apply for a parklet permit. That might be something that you think this is because it is a pop-up parklet, but that triggers a different review that could be more extensive and does not allow you to participate in parking day necessarily. So we want to make sure you're submitting the right permit, which is the other special event. And it looks like a button like this in TOPS. Skipping a few steps to the parking location, you want to enter the closest street address for your park and then describe it along the curb. So if there is a multi-space meter versus individual meters for the parking space, which is relatively common, you'll need to describe which parking meter space you're using on that street. And noting that if you are an organization that wants to have multiple parks, which has happened several times, each pop-up parklet needs their own separate application because they're separate locations. So we'll work with you on that. For the dates and hours, once you submit the date and location and you move to the next page, and it's not if it's not correct, you'll have to start over. So make sure that it's the correct date on Friday, September 16th from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. If you're not planning to use it the whole time, I still recommend just having it go to 7 p.m. so that in case anything comes up, you have that extra time to, occupy that space. Make sure that is correct before moving forward. For the parking meters, this can be a little confusing, like what numbers you use. I've included some visuals here. It's not the pay by phone parking numbers, it's the numbers that's actually on the meter. And you won't reach this page if you didn't select the location that has a parking meter. So make sure it's an 8-digit number on the white label and not the 5-digit number on the green pay by phone. And then for steps 8, 11, and 12, these really, because you're using a public space permit type that can be used for many different events, from like street festivals to anything that kind of happens in public space, these basically don't apply to parking day. So just make sure to select no for all the buttons on on these 3 steps. Otherwise, this will trigger more reviewers that are not necessary for this event. So just click no and basically skip these steps. And then finally, this is the most important step, the document upload. So this is where you're going to upload those documents we talked about before, which are your park concept or the description of what you're doing, the site design or site plan showing the actual footprint for your installation, the parking day release form, and the certificate of liability insurance. These are all downloaded as PDFs to TOPS, and make sure you actually hit upload to them so that they upload into the TOPS. You cannot submit this in person. This is totally online. And I'm happy to review any of these documents in advance before submitting to TOPS and actually recommend it if you email it to me first to make sure that everything looks good. And then for the permittee owner information type, make sure you include parking day 2022 so that our permit techs know to send this to me as the parking day coordinator for review and that it's not some other random special event that's happening in the district. So that's really important step as well. Once you submit, please email me. Here is my email letting me know that you've sent this in. I will keep track of it, make sure it's getting approved quickly, and that you can get your permit. Once you have an issued permit, meaning all of the reviewers and TOPS have approved the permit, there are no issues, you'll get a notification that your permit's been issued, and you'll actually need to go to specific locations to print it out. You'll need to remember your tracking number and your TOPS login, and I can send a map of where those locations are. They're essentially any police precinct. And so you'll need to print out your permit and the emergency no parking signs that are associated with those. Those need to be put out depending on the location 24 to 72 hours in advance of the event. And there's a list of steps on the back of those signs. You'll need to take a picture of those and send it to DPW so that if anyone parks in your space during the event, you can call DPW and have those cars towed. It happens. I just want to say that it has happened every year that I've participated in this. There's always a car that just is left there overnight, and then you can't activate your space. So make sure you get those emergency no parking signs up there when you print your permit. They print out together. And then that permit basically allows you to occupy that space beginning at 9 a.m., not before. And then you'll need to remove everything by 7 p.m. that day. And that space is yours to use how it's approved. Uh, and that's it. We can basically answer any questions as part of this time. Here is our official comment questionnaire that we use to make sure that we're, meeting all of the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to submit it here at the website at the top. These slides will be posted on our website. I can also send them to people per request if you want to email me here at kimberly.baca@dc.gov. And then we'll be posting this recording on our website as well if you want to rewatch this for anything that you may have missed. So I will open the floor for questions. I see someone has asked, how will we receive these slides? So like I said, just via email, and they will be on our website, which I'll bring the website up again. You'll be able to find it here at the bottom of the page. There is an attachment section where we currently have our guidelines. It'll just be right below it. Okay. I see, Emmanuel, you'll have your hand up. Are you able to unmute yourself, or Molly? Are you able to unmute him?
Their hand just went down,
Oh, okay.
but I am able to unmute folks. Oh, there we are. All right. You should receive a request to unmute now.
Thank you. So I think I do recall this is Emmanuel with DC Water. Thanks for
Hi.
hosting the information session. It was very enlightening. I do recall back in, I guess it was maybe 2016, we had participated in a parking day in conjunction with our DC Clean Rivers project, our green infrastructure team in Georgetown. We did not, so I head up the pretty much the outreach suit for DC Water. We didn't host a site, so we wouldn't be looking to host a site this year. And reaching out and coordinating with DDOT on lots of events every year. We look for opportunities to attend an event as you guys have them and want that coordination with us to bring out, waterworks and other things that we do. So for
Mhm.
my purposes, it would be more so if you guys know of a know of one location that you would like to see us to set up at with, giveaways and when did the water drop and things like that, we would be interested in attending one of those locations
Okay.
versus trying to host one.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that'd be great. There are a lot of other district agencies that have participated in the past. Even ourselves, we do our own pop-up parklet. Last year, we did a pop-up protected bike lane on Pennsylvania for like 600 feet, which was very fun. And so potentially maybe even we can partner with you. So I will follow up
Okay,
and let
that
you
actually
know.
was my hope is that if DDOT itself was hosting one, we'd like to attend that one and yeah.
Okay. We're going to have a few. We're trying to put
Okay.
our money where our mouth is, by encouraging people to participate. So I will follow up with you. Thank you.
We could one other thing we could actually so if you have a few, we do have enough resources to split a team up in a day, so we could maybe cover two locations versus one. So we could get creative and jazzy with it. So I guess we'll just continue to communicate with you in the coming months, and we'll figure it out.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Did I see someone else with their hand raised?
Oh, yes, Monique just raised their hand. You should receive a request to unmute.
Afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to know if we do not have parking meters, does it matter? We only have time restriction in our area.
So you are in a rush hour parking lane?
We have, there's no rush hour parking lanes, but it is like a 2 hour limit for parking.
Got it. Okay, that's a bit different than what we mean by time of day restrictions necessarily. So, what we don't want is it to be in a rush hour lane, but the 2 hour parking is more just a limitation on how long you can park there. We have allowed some pop-up parklets in non-metered spaces. We don't necessarily encourage that because there's a little bit more coordination with adjacent neighbors, or potentially it might not be suitable. So feel free to email me where you're thinking of participating and hosting a pop-up parklet, and I can evaluate it to see if it meets all of the other criteria for the event.
Okay, thank you so much. I have some locations that I'm thinking about, and I will send them to you shortly.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions while you have me? So far, no hands are raised, so hopefully this made sense, was clear. I know we have a lot of consistent participants every year, which I thank you so much for participating and making this such a fun event. We will continue to do social media plugs this year, so highlighting all the different groups that participate. We'll be showcasing the different pop-up parklets on the route, making a map, potentially doing another bike route again this year for people to bike by. We expect this year to be, I know we've had a dip last year and the year before due to COVID, and a lot of people didn't have the resources or time to participate and come out. And we expect this one to be come out with quite the bang, as we've seen with many of our other DDOT sanctioned events like Open Streets. So get excited. I hope I see all of you there, and feel free to email me with any outstanding questions between now and September. So thank you so much for coming, and have a great day.